Hello, and welcome to The Black Unconscious,
a mental health podcast about living, coping, and thriving while Black.
I'm Raquel Martin, a PhD candidate in medical and clinical psychology.
And I'm Dr. Justin Hopkins, a licensed clinical psychologist.
This podcast is not meant to be a substitute for a therapeutic relationship with a licensed therapist.
Thank you for tuning in, and we hope you enjoy the show. Hey, and welcome to The Black Unconscious. I am your host, Dr. Justin Hopkins.
And I am Raquel Martin.
This is episode 6, Mental Health and Hip Hop. And so today we are going to talk about hip hop and mainstream culture and how mental health has jumped into the mainstream conversation. Stigma is on the decline, awareness is on the increase. And so we have a lot of people that are in the public eye that are talking more about their own mental health issues and what it's like to seek help for them. And so we want to talk about that a little bit, add some context, and just explore what that's been like being a mental health professional and seeing that happening in the larger social culture atmosphere.
Yeah, I really like the fact that we're talking more about it, and not just in hip hop, like actresses and actors have talked more about going to mental health, but with bringing things to the mainstream, I've also seen some things that are actually inaccurate, especially when it comes to diagnoses and everything like that. And also, I always say that your mental health is a fingerprint, and I think some people just assume that since this person has talked about depression this way or anxiety this way, that if theirs doesn't present that way, then they can't possibly have that diagnosis. So right. I think it's always important that it's amazing that things are coming out in the mainstream, but it's also important to just acknowledge that your mental health is a fingerprint. Fingerprint is different for everyone. So your depression is going to be different than, Beyonce or someone else's depression.
Absolutely. So I'm looking forward to getting into this. I think we're going to have a really good discussion today. Before we get into it, though, we have a milestone to celebrate. Self-love is the best love. So we want to give ourselves some love real quick. And just note that, so this being episode 6, we've had 5 episodes, our first month out, and we are up to over 1,100 downloads. So we sincerely appreciate everyone who has supported us and checked out our other episodes. We're growing, and we hope to continue to grow and continue to get better, and we can't do it without your support. So thank you, everyone.
We really appreciate the listens, and the subscriptions, and the reviews, and the comments, and everything. People reaching out to us about it, so it's great. And thank you.
So Raquel, as we get into celebrities and them just talking about their own mental health, I feel like there's one thing that I feel like we have to address first, and it's kind of like I won't say it's kind of a it's not to negate what it will say moving forward, but it's just kind of to add some context to what it's like as a mental health professional. I think talking about these issues and some of the ethical and aspirational guidelines of our field that do complicate our conversations around these things. So I think one thing we need to point out is this thing called the Goldwater Rule, right? Yeah. So the Goldwater Rule is basically this issue that arose in 1964. It is an ethical guideline that was mandated by the American Psychiatric Association. And the American Psychological Association does have something similar in place. It came out of a lawsuit that was filed by a U.S. senator by the name of Gary Goldwater. And there was an article that was released that had the opinion of a psychiatrist about Mr. Goldwater's mental state. And Goldwater sued, and because there were some negative things that were said about his mental state. And now we have this rule that psychiatrists, psychologists, mental health professionals are not supposed to diagnose public figures without a relationship with them.
Yes.
So we're not going to do any of that.
Yeah, so the important part is that the Goldwater Rule was said that we're not supposed to diagnose celebrities, basically, and we don't. I just think
unless they're your patient, of course.
Unless they're your patient, and none of them are my patient. I wish, but no, I do not wish actually. But So we're talking about it solely from just a perspective, and also what's given to us through the media. Because one, I think we have way too much info about the celebrities in the first place. Like, that's the way the media has gone lately. But even with that, like, we can only go off of what is portrayed to us, unless we're talking about specific interviews.
Right. So now I will say, actually, this rule is kind of like it's been debated now because we have so much more information about people. For example, in 2016 and in 2017, psychiatrists and clinical psychologists purposely violated the Goldwater rule to talk about Trump's fitness as a president. And many mental health professionals have actually felt conflicted about whether he is fit to serve as president. So there's actually a lot of debate because we have more information about individuals in this social media area that we're in, whether psychiatrists and mental health professionals can actually add some insight into someone's psychological makeup, even though they're not their direct patient. Other entities have also argued that because these public figures aren't our direct patients, that we don't have necessarily the same ethical limitations to not comment on them. So all that to say, there is a debate, but we're going to just explore and talk about some of our own thoughts about mental health becoming more mainstream, what some of these popular individuals, these public figures, have said about their own mental health. Nothing that we say will be a diagnosis or some sort of implication about how this person is doing overall in terms of their psychological health. I think that's a line that we're gonna dance on, but it's a line that I think everyone is kind of dancing on a little bit in this day and age.
Yeah. So what side are you on?
I feel mixed, of course. I don't think I can pick just one. I think I think you have so much more information about people when you have someone displaying their behaviors and their thoughts and their feelings in a very candid way on a regular basis to the public. Obviously, there's a meaning that you can make from that. I don't think it's right to publicly state someone's diagnosis. I actually think it's okay to share some concern or some context about issues in a more general way, though.
Yeah, I get that. I don't think it's possible for me to diagnose the Trump. It's like a Freudian slip. I don't think it's possible for me to diagnose them because anytime I'm having a session with someone, so much comes out. And I also do not think his public persona, I don't know. I'm not sure if it aligns. I don't know who he is as a person, but I always feel like the part of you that's portrayed to the public can be very different than who you are privately. And privately is what we diagnose anyway, to a certain extent. So I don't think it's possible to diagnose someone based off of my perception as a clinician. But as a human being, I will probably
Wait.
talk
You
a lot
said you
of
don't think it's possible to diagnose someone off of your perception as a clinician? Or as
public perception.
Yeah.
Yeah,
sure,
not perception as like we sit in sessions every single week. But I do always say stuff like, "Oh, he's probably tripping off of this." We can only see so much,
right.
And even though we do get so much access to them, it's still different when they're in session.
Absolutely, people are very different in session when you get down into the nitty gritty of their humanity and things that they don't share with anyone else. So.
Yeah,
I agree. I think it's a complicated line to navigate. But I guess we deal in gray spaces, and so to some degree here we are. So Raquel, how do you feel in general about some of the celebrities in hip hop and in elsewhere? Because it's not just hip hop. Obviously, we're going to get into two individuals in particular. But I mean, how do you feel about some folks opening up about their mental health, whether it be through their music, through interviews that they have, etc.?
Oh, I love it. It's actually one of the reasons why I have always loved Kid Cudi. Like, I've loved him since Down
Kid
and
Cudi
Out.
is one, yeah.
Like it's just the vulnerability of it to people. One of the reasons why I like the idea of doing the celebrity episode is because I try not to lionize celebrities, but so many people do that it really takes a celebrity to say something is okay before someone's like, oh, I guess it's okay for me to do it too. You know, and you could take it both ways, like with Jay-Z talking about therapy, you see the positive side, but then also with him talking about cheating on his wife, you see the negative side, people being like, well, if Beyonce can take Jay-Z back, you know, why can't you take Ray back? And it's like, it's not the same thing. So the perception kind of gets messed up, but I do like the fact that more people are talking about going to therapy and the stigma behind therapy, and also how it helped them and how it changed them. And I like when celebrities talk about how in the beginning they're like, I'm not ever going to therapy because I just think it didn't make any sense. And then they went and they realized they had a change of heart.
Right.
Like, it is okay to have a change of heart when it comes to things.
Right.
So I like it as long as it's taken with a grain of salt and everyone understands everyone's experience is different.
Right. You know, and Jennifer Lewis actually talks about, she's a Black woman who plays the paternal grandmother on Blackish. She talks about her
she plays a lot though.
She does.
She done been in everything. So we just want to.
She's an OG.
She's freaking amazing. Yeah, she's played in everything, a different world. She's had like a million movies by herself. But yeah, okay. I'm sorry.
Right. So her portfolio is long, right? And she's been acting for years and years and years. She's had some really amazing roles. But she even talks about her experience with battling with bipolar and avoiding medication for years and feeling like maybe that she didn't need medication or didn't need the help that she actually did need. And I agree. I think talking about these kind of things, I mean, it destigmatizes it for a lot of us to see people who are incredibly successful, incredibly talented at their craft, but also deal with certain mental health issues. You start to, it more and more and more, it feels like, well, this is something that everyone obviously deals with. If someone who's that high up in their profession can struggle, then obviously anybody can.
Yeah, because no matter what, we're human. She says specifically it took her mental health clinician 5 years to convince her to get on the medication.
Right.
5 years. And that just goes more to what we talk about when it comes to the fact that you have to be willing to do it. Like, you have to be willing to put in work. Period. Right. But it 5 years it took. Yeah. And even after that, she said, and then you have to wait for your levels to regulate. And then you have to make sure the medication works appropriately. Because like we said before, it's not like a one and done and then it'll work out perfectly. You just have to wait. You have to be willing to put in the time for your mental health and for your energy and all of that. Because that's just, if you have that much dedication, I feel like Kerry Washington said it first. She said it best to me. She said, my brain and my heart are really important to me. I don't know why I wouldn't seek help to have those things be as healthy as my teeth. I go to the dentist, so why wouldn't I go to a shrink? So like, yeah, you just got to be more dedicated to it.
Right. You know, there's so many other people. So Prodigy opened up in 2017 before he passed away, actually, about his struggle with sickle cell. He was diagnosed with sickle cell at 3 months old, and he grew up with some depression in light of his challenges with sickle cell because it limited him physically. And so he talks about how like his physical health intertwined with his medical health. Chance the Rapper has talked about battling anxiety and trauma from losing friends in Chicago. Eminem has battled substance abuse, anger issues, and depression. And he's candid about that in his verses as well. Kendrick Lamar talks about battling depression and some alcoholism in his family. So I think all of these things I think, you know, obviously put mental health in the center of our mainstream culture, but you know, obviously normalizes it. But we want to get into two people.
Can I add some more though? Because there's like way more.
Sure.
So I can't help but think about like DMX's the track Slippin', where he talks about how rough it was. It was like, I'm slipping, I can't get up or stuff. And I think he was talking more about his rehab concerns. And then on Mad, on A Seat at the Table with Solange, Lil Wayne talks about like he has a burden in you know, when it comes to depression and stuff like that. And then of course Kid Cudi, Pursuit of Happiness, all those aspects.
Right. Well, on that, I think, what was that? The album or the song Kid Cudi talks about, I've got some issues that nobody can see and all these emotions are pouring out of me.
Soundtrack to My Life.
Yes, right. Soundtrack to My Life.
You got Vic Mensa talking about it. You got who talked about
Vic Mensa has been great lately.
Yeah, he has. He's been really good at doing that. And then also Kid Cudi's been talking about it for a minute. And specifically like the fact that he in the, what was the track? Y'all gonna have to excuse me because like Down and Out when he talks about specifically how he's trying to drown his sorrows and his depressions and meds and like substance use and stuff like that. And I was like, man, that's just so real. One, to be open about depression. Two, to be open about the fact that like I tried to use drugs to cover it. You know, a lot of people do. And also with other mental health disorders, Solange talked about one time how she was diagnosed with ADHD when she was younger. It's just all these celebrities talk about it, but it's not just like when they have interviews, they're talking about it in their lyrics. They're talking about it when they're rapping and stuff like that. That's why I like rap and hip hop so much, because I get to hear their internal, their inner dialogue about things. Like that's really their venting and their catharsis and stuff like that. I think some people, just see the lyrics as what they're rapping, but like you got to hear like when you actually listen to it. Don't just listen to the single that comes on the radio. Listen to the album, because that's how they wanted it to be heard anyway.
Right. And speaking of albums, so there is an album that I heard recently by accident.
Jesus.
Completely by accident.
First of all, it's not possible to hear an album by accident.
It is definitely possible.
Right. So which album are you talking about, Dr. Hopkins?
I'm going to tell you which album it is. So it's Yay by our former friend and former icon. Well, he's still an icon. He's still an icon. But I think in the past, he used to be... there's an old Kanye and there's a new Kanye that he even refers to. But I recently heard his new album, and I didn't really intend to listen to it because obviously he's said some really problematic things in the past. Actually, fairly recently, dismissing slavery completely, I think, has been one of the most egregious things. He's also been very supportive of 45. In ways that I think he doesn't really understand, or that he feels that are like kind of innocent and it's just an opinion, where he's really just ignoring the level of power that he has for his platform, and how he strips away the pain, the suffering, the oppression, and the effort of so many other Black folks that look like him by using that platform in a way that is irresponsible and dismissive of our trials and tribulations. So I have mixed feelings about him.
It's not just the Black folks that like him that makes it problematic what he's saying. He has such a big platform that so many people are watching what he's saying and thinking that he's speaking for all of us. One, nobody speaks for all of us, but two, the stupid crap that he says just represents us in a bad light. But it's also, I think it's also because he's so far removed. So I don't think he doesn't recognize his celebrity. He knows his celebrity. That's why he doesn't have a problem taking pictures when it comes to, just being with Trump and stuff like that and all that crap. But he's so far removed from issues that he does not really understand what's happening in the world. I forget which interview it was that they were talking about. A celebrity was talking to him. I don't know if it was T.I. or someone. And they had to explain to him the travel ban.
Right.
He legit didn't know what the travel ban was. So here you go. You have this person who Black man who's out here taking pictures with people and speaking on things, and he doesn't even understand what the travel ban is.
Right.
Like, I'm a big, I don't know everything, but I know what I know. I also don't like being embarrassed. So I prefer not to talk about stuff I don't know what I'm talking about.
Right.
So, I really don't, want to look like a boo-boo the fool out here. And you have this man who's out here saying all these statements and he's not well informed.
Right.
So that just really pisses me off to hear someone talking about this stuff and you don't even know who you're supporting. He acts like, I think he said one time, like, taking a picture is taking a picture. No, it's not. Make America Great Again hats aren't just Make America Great Again hats.
Right. Symbols
mean things. Taking pictures of people mean things. And it's just like, he needs to sit down.
Well, even Kim K has said like that Kanye validated Trump. She's even come out and said that. Like his numbers in the polls actually went up among African American people in our community. So he like when he does those kind of things, like it really has like powerful impact. So he's been incredibly irresponsible. So I'm a former Kanye fan. Like I really loved.
No,
obviously
you are still a Kanye fan.
I wouldn't say that.
You don't think you're music wise. So so that's one thing that makes it hard to like these artists at a certain sense, because the fact that we know so much about their personal life, it's so hard to separate their personal life from the music.
That's true.
However, opinion-wise on the album, what did you think about the album?
I think the music. I mean, he's a musical genius.
So, what did you think about the album?
He's a musical genius.
Just say what you thought. Just say what you thought about the album.
Right. So, I thought the album was good.
Okay, so then you're a fan of him as an artist. Like the thing that sucks about knowing so much about these celebrities is I really wish I did not know how like moronic some of them can be. Because
when you idolize them, that idolization is like all encompassing.
Yeah.
So you think they're well informed, you think they're intelligent, and we don't realize that humans are humans. Like obviously, even if you're a genius, like literally, like even if you're a genius in one area, it's also possible to be completely ignorant and completely uninformed and completely unintelligent in other areas.
So it's not possible to say you're not completely. You may not be a fan of him as a person, but if you still listen to his music, then you're still a fan.
Well,
because I don't like him
is there
as
such
a
thing as
person.
like an accidental fan? Like I can't.
I don't even know what that means. What does accidental fan mean?
I just feel like I can't support him. Like I don't like him as a person, but his music is, I mean, amazing, right?
So,
but I don't intentionally seek out his music anymore.
So after that accidental listen, you never listen to the album again?
A couple times.
So, can you see where this is going? Like, you can't.
I do.
Yeah. So you can't just say, I don't seek out his music, because, I mean, you listen to the album again. I don't have a problem with it. I listen to the album.
Mm-hmm.
My husband loves the album, so I know every single song, and that, I guess that was accidental. But after I'm leaving the house and listening to it, I still listen to it in the car. So I think I do struggle with being a human and thinking like the things he says are like ridiculous. But I'm not going to act like he is not a production genius, because his tracks are bomb, and I'm not going to act like it. So I get it. It's like a cognitive dissonance, but I'm not going to act like I don't listen to the album, because it's just the way it is.
I think I was trying to do some mental gymnastics to get out of that.
Yeah, good luck with that.
I think that's what was just happening.
I work with angry teens.
To.
You cannot bypass my question. I am so used to people being like, I don't want to answer it. Well, you're going to.
I feel really, really conflicted about this guy.
Oh yeah, I'm definitely
Kanye
conflicted
West.
about my
I just feel
opinion
so conflicted. But you know what? For better or for worse, right? He does open up about mental health on his new album, Yay, and he goes into great depths about it. I mean, and I guess that's what makes an amazing artist to some extent. I mean, first of all, I don't want to again trivialize. We've already said it, but I mean, he's been so irresponsible in ways that literally hurt Black lives. Yeah. Period. Right? Let's not sugarcoat, minimize, or in any way decrease that. There is I think part of the allure of him and so many other artists is because he's so so vulnerable and so raw and so unafraid to say what is real for him, to give us an illustration of his reality as he experiences it, that it draws people in.
But what I think is dangerous about that is
right, there is a danger.
His platform. Yeah. So I've heard many people, like many celebrities, say things like, I didn't want to be a role model. Sucks. You are a role model.
Right. Charles Barkley has said that. Others
a lot of people.
Yeah.
And it sucks. Okay, you don't want to be a role model, but you are a role model. And you do take, the platform that you have. So, I can sit here and just, have a conversation with my friends that's not recorded, and I can say some really ridiculous stuff, but I'm not Kanye West, and I'm not the one who's on TV saying these things. So I get some kind of I get to hide behind just being a regular person. He can't. Yeah. And I understand that's stressful. And I'm sure that's why there are so many mental health issues with celebrities, but this is just the way it is. And it's just very concerning. Like what he says is dangerous and concerning and upsetting.
Right.
And he's got to watch that because
especially the things about race and politics.
Yeah. With his mental health diagnosis
right. So he was diagnosed at 39. He's come out and shared that, but he hasn't said what he's diagnosed with. He said he was diagnosed with a mental condition, but he does talk about bipolar in his album, Yay.
What does he say?
So he's said some complicated things.
Okay, well, so, I mean, I remember, I'm thinking of the songs right now, and I'm just trying to get you to quote them because you said that you're not supporting him. And I know you know the lyrics by heart because you've heard it multiple times.
I don't think I know the lyrics by heart, but he does say, so there's the album cover art. I hate being bipolar. It's awesome.
Which, I kind of love that. I'm not even gonna lie. I really do, because it represents the duality of bipolar disorder, and if people don't know, it's a disorder where you cycle between mania and depression. Right.
So the depression we've talked about on this show before. Obviously, it's the down, it's the lack of motivation. It can be irritation. It could be so many different things. The hopelessness, thoughts of suicide. But then mania, which is less. I think people know a little bit less about. We hear bipolar, and I think sometimes we just think it's like hot and cold, like sad and then really, really happy. Well, mania is a little bit more. I mean, it borders on it can, for a lot of people, border on an episode of psychosis where you really feel Like, you are capable of doing things at a superhuman level, way above and beyond what any normal human being would be able to do. You have no, you often have no interest in sleep because you feel like you don't need any, because your energy is so high. You have a flight of ideas and a level of grandiosity, ideas of reference that circle around your own mind. So kind of feeling like you have these very, very specific thoughts, but that they apply, that everyone can kind of join you in those thoughts, or are aware of those thoughts, or understand those thoughts to the same level of degree that you do. So at times, if you're speaking about something like really, really, really detailed, without any context, but assuming that someone has that same level of thinking. So there's this distortion of reality that comes with mania, that and a level of impulsivity, and irritation, and a flight of ideas, I think, are already mentioned. So there's a level of there's a really high level of energy that disturbs one in a lot of different facets of life, and it can be really scary to see. This isn't something that you can like miss. Mania is very, very it's very stark, and it can be scary being someone who's witnessing someone have that kind of episode. Also, risky behavior, spending lots of money, or having reckless sex, that's also can be a part of mania as well. So a lot of risk-taking, impulsive kind of behavior, and it cycles back and forth. So that's basically bipolar in a nutshell. And so Kanye has talked about bipolar, and that album art talking about bipolar, like, I hate it, but it's awesome.
Yeah, I think that was I thought it was incredibly clever, and he also talks about the disorder a lot. Did you see the interview with Charlemagne the God?
I actually didn't, but I heard about it.
Yeah, so so like with that, so here's my biggest concern. So he says that he's been quoted talking about therapists before, right? And Charlemagne asked him about that because he's very open about, Charlemagne is all very open about talking about his going to therapy.
Right.
So Kanye West says, when I say therapist, I don't mean an actual therapist. I don't go to therapists. I mean, like, I talk to my friends and my family as therapists. It's not the same thing.
No, it's
That's
not.
Concerning.
Yeah.
You can't use the different words. Like, he's not going to therapists. He's talking to friends and family. And if you get nothing from this episode, your friends and your family members are not your therapist.
Right.
I am a therapist, and I'm studying to be a psychologist. But when I talk to my friends, it's not as a therapist, because I'm not your clinician at all, and I have no desire to be, because that's not my job. That's not what I'm trying to be here. So talking to your friends and therapists about,
you can't therapize your friends, you can't therapize yourself, you can't therapize your family.
No, and nor do I want to. Like, I can't imagine being in a session with my family. No, thank you.
Right.
But the fact that he just talks about, like, oh no, when I mean therapy like a professional, I meant like, oh, my friends and family. Why is that? There's just so much wrong with that, because do not think that venting is the same as talking to a licensed, trained professional. When I talk to my friends, it's because I want to vent or I want their opinion on something. When I talk to my clinician, it's because I want the opinion of a trained professional, someone who has gone to school, who has had experience, has worked with patients, who like, you do this. Like, when it comes to different topics, and I'm no expert, hopefully one day I will get so much better at it, but I have 1 bachelor's, 2 masters, working on a PhD, done publications. I do this is what I do with psychology, with child and adolescent psychology, with trauma, with health disparities. That is what I'm talking about when I'm talking to a patient. I'm not talking about, oh girl, you should do this. It's not the same thing.
It's not.
So it is so, and it's probably my, it is so like, you're just blowing stuff off by saying, like, you want to talk to a family or talk to a friend. There's nothing wrong with that. I talk to my family, my friends all the time, but I process with my psychologist. Right. It is not the same thing.
And that the level of difference in that, I think, for some people is hard to grasp, but it's the difference between saying something and working through that thing. And it's in unpacking it, processing it, getting into the nitty-gritty of it, understanding how what it is that you experience continues to manifest in your own life with the feelings and relationships that you have. There's a whole lot working through piece is just, it's challenging, and you need to do that with a licensed therapist. You just do. That's not something that a family member can provide. Even for Raquel and I, like, there's, you would never provide therapy for someone that you knew intimately.
No, and it's actually unethical. You're not allowed to. That's in our guidelines.
Unethical.
As it's unethical. We cannot list like the licensures that we get. You are.
It's also I believe is illegal. Yep. I'll have to double check that. But there's a difference between there's a difference between our ethical guidelines and what's legally required. But then there's of the highest order, that is also illegal, because we're humans too, and you can't just wipe away an entire history of a relationship with someone and just be their therapist. That's not possible.
Yep.
And knowing that that's not possible, that's completely against the what our profession stands for. So
yeah, and there's a difference in power dynamics. It's also the reason why you're not allowed to have these kind of relationships with your patients, especially romantic relationships. If as a clinician have a romantic relationship with your patient, you are losing your license and you are no longer a mental health clinician. That's it.
And possibly serving jail time.
Yes, because there is a difference in the power dynamic. This is not just like, I'm talking to my friends about it. This is something that people were trained to do, who have dedicated their time and energy to do. So it is not the same thing.
I think it's also hard to grasp just how many emotions and experiences come up. Like when you're in therapy.
Yeah, you would have to be in therapy to know, because
you would have to you really the amount of learning you do about yourself and how just how heavy some of the content is that just like organically comes up as you're talking through this stuff. It's hard to know. It's hard to really grasp that unless you've experienced it and realize that there really is a difference between just saying something to someone and actually processing and working through, having someone respond to the things that you're saying in a way that opens up the space and allows you to work through what you're feeling. It's like night and day.
Yeah, Jay-Z talks about that when he talks about therapy. When he was asked, when he did his New York Times interview, was it specifically New York Times? I'm a big Jay-Z fan, so I probably watch like every interview. So please forgive me if I mix the people up. But I think it was his New York Times interview. Yeah, because the speaker, he said, your album 444 sounds like a therapy session. Like it sounds like you're
yes.
And
yeah.
he was like, I think he was kind of like, what did therapy teach you? And he was like, it taught me that everything is connected. Like it,
yes.
like, that.
Yeah.
And, learning more about yourself. Charlamagne talks about that too, like learning more about yourself. It's not the same thing. I think the way I present myself during, there are times as a clinician in therapy where someone can say during session, I've never told anyone about this. I haven't told my husband about this, my wife about this, my best friend about this, my mom about this.
Yeah.
Because, so just think about like how much more, and that shows the difference in the relationship between therapy. The therapeutic relationship is so different because relationships with friends and family, that's a reciprocal relationship, right? Mm-hmm. Like you give and you take, you want it to be 50-50. When I'm in a session, it is all about you. You will not have any other relationship other than therapy with your clinician where the entire 50 minutes to an hour is about you. You have family and friends, you're expected to give and take. When we're in a therapeutic relationship, it's all about you. There's no other relationship that's going to be like that. And not when you... period. And that's why it is so different. And that's why you can't think it's the same thing to talk to a friend. And plus being training, I think a lot of times people don't really think about the training that it goes into to be a mental health clinician. Like I've been in school. I mean, I went to Fisk in 2000. I started in 2006. I am still in school. Mm-hmm. And then after I finish this first part of my residency, I have a second part of my residency, and then I have to take a licensure exam. And then I also want to be board certified.
Right.
I technically, and you learn more as you go on in the profession. So I think you shouldn't discount, I think it's a little dismissive. I think it's incredibly dismissive to say like, I don't need therapy or something because I talk to my friend. It's not the same thing.
Right.
A licensed clinician is different than talking to your friend.
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the things I wanted to point out with this new Kanye album is just how forward he is about a wide range of his feelings. Like he literally has... Let's look at some of these, the title of some of the songs on this album, right? So he literally has a song called I Thought About Killing You. And I know, and I hear your exasperation.
Yeah.
But then he, and understandably so, right? And like in the biz, we call those like homicidal thoughts.
In the biz.
In the biz. So cool. In mental health. Like we call those homicidal ideation, just as like thoughts of killing yourself, we call it suicidal ideation. SI and HI.
And he's normalizing it, which is he also says like, oh, everyone does it. I love me more than I love, other people. So if I remember him saying, you only think about killing people you love or something of that sense. I gotta look up these lyrics.
Yeah. And you know what? Here's my thing on it. Because as a mental health professional, I think the aspiration is to try to learn as much as you can about every crevice of human experience. And so, obviously, as a mental health therapist, you work with people who have, inevitably, you'll work with people who have a wide range of issues. Anger, unless you're specializing in one particular thing. But I'm more of a journalist. I know, Raquel, you've worked with children with a wide-ranging number of issues.
Yeah.
And so when you work
and families, because I also do family therapy.
Sure, and I do couples as well. But the idea of rage is not something that's off limits, because rage is a human emotion, and so everyone feels it to some degree. Every human emotion is experienced to some degree, a little less or more, depending on how your own individual psychology develops. You are more in touch with that emotion or less, depending on how your experiences have shaped up. You repress that emotion more, or you're more conscious of it. So for Kanye to have this song talking about, I thought about killing you, nothing is off the table. These are some of the lyrics, and they're not quite in context, but in some ways I feel mixed about it. In some ways, I think he is trying to say, listen, like these kind of emotions are really, really taboo, but I have them, and I'm putting them into my music because this is how I express myself and share about my own reality. And he does, right, a couple songs later. So that's the first song I thought about killing you. Like right out the gate, he's like, I'm not holding anything back. The next song is Yikes, and after that is All Mine, and then the fourth song is Wouldn't Leave. So in this album,
I'm sorry.
So you got to explain that. You got to explain it. Put some words to that.
So the problem that I have with that, as a female, is that, okay, yeah, I told her to leave, but I knew she wouldn't leave. She wasn't man enough to leave. What is that? So he talks about like putting his wife through so much stuff.
He does say that.
And then I think people bypass that, because I was actually talking to my husband about that song, and I was like, I don't like that song. And I told him why I didn't like it, and he was like, "Oh, he said she wasn't man enough to leave." I said, he said it like 50 times. I think maybe I listen to songs too deeply. Maybe that's a thing, but it's not. I'm actually giving it like, but to say that like she wasn't man enough to leave me, there's just so many problems I have with that. Like one. I don't even know how to verbalize it, but why is that something that's okay to say? Well, you know what? It is okay to say, because this is your artistry, and you're so, but it just,
it's not about okay or right or wrong.
You're right, because feelings are not right or wrong. Feelings just are. So I take that back. It is not okay to say that. It's just, I just also automatically have like a visceral, like, reaction to that. Like, nah, man, she ain't gonna leave me. She ain't man enough to leave me.
Well, I think what you're highlighting is there may be a lack of empathy. Him being the male and Kim K being the woman, and him saying, "Yeah, I thought about killing you, but you're not gonna leave."
Yeah,
like,
we don't know that he was talking about her though, with thinking about killing you.
That's true.
Yeah, because in one of the lines he says, "You'd only care enough to kill somebody you love." Oh, okay. Is that where we're at?
Right, right.
So we don't know if that's what he's saying, but just to say that she's not man enough to leave it kind of makes me feel like, and he may not have meant it this way, but saying you're not man enough to leave, I took that like, oh, she wouldn't be wrong to leave me, but she ain't gonna do it.
So, which means there really isn't a consequence for me? Is that what you're saying?
There is
so
no consequence for me, and I know I'm doing stuff wrong, but she's gonna stay here.
Right. I think I think there's some of that, right? There's some of that, right? It's just like, I've done a lot of things to her, but she isn't gonna leave me. And perhaps like discounting her pain and like, and just saying, hey, I'm not going to experience the consequences of this.
That's what it is. It's the discounting the pain part.
Yeah.
That's
right.
Yeah.
Right.
It's
the invalidation.
It's the invalidation. That's what bothers me. To me,
right.
That's what I get from it. That's exactly it. The discounting the pain.
Right. But he does also say like, I think the lyric is, he says, the beautiful thoughts are always besides the darkest. Right. And I think there is some truth, right, to the fact that love and hate are on opposite sides of the same coin. I think the thing that I think could become problematic for other people is, even though he's sharing about the hate and rage that fuels up with him, which actually I do believe is natural for most people. We're just not as conscious of those emotions. I think those are taboo. And for most people, we hide them from ourselves, or our mind just naturally develop defense mechanisms that either keep those emotions out of our conscious awareness or allows us to sublimate them in other ways and displace them, work them out or manage them in ways where they don't come out. I do like that he says it because maybe people who experience that level of rage more consciously won't have to deal with the shame of what.
Yeah, see, I get that part too. I think sometimes to
be that angry and upset and to battle those kind of heavy, hard emotions, to feel suicidal and homicidal.
Yeah, I always have some kind of dissonance when it comes to music and the artist because one, I really do appreciate the fact that you're sharing it. But two, I also think that, when it comes to music, I can honestly say sometimes I take stuff too seriously when I read it. And I also don't know the way that they meant it. And I also don't know when they wrote that. So I can see taking it too seriously, but I think it's just because when you have certain celebrities that you just hold dear, that you grow up with, when they do something to piss you off, it really pisses you off. What happened with Kanye, I felt that in my spirit. Oh my God, why would you? And I felt why would you do this to me? I've been with you since college dropout, since mixtapes. Why would you?
There are a lot of people that feel like that. There are a lot of people that feel like Damon Young from Very Smart Brothers talks about Kanye Island and being a fan of his. Yeah. But feel people are leaving the island every single day because he says things that are so problematic. And I think with this, I do again. So I appreciate that he's destigmatizing rage and homicidal and suicidal thoughts because they're so taboo. And the more something is taboo, the less it's talked about, and obviously the more it festers. I think the thing that can get kind of misunderstood sometimes though is there's a level of relishing I think he does in his music. In his own aggression and uniqueness.
Talk more about that. What do you mean?
So it feels like, throughout the track of I Thought About Killing You, he's very clear to say, I'm not trying to relate to anybody. I could say, I'm having some feelings that are challenging and I'm struggling with something, but I'm not saying that. And I just want to say, I really just thought about hurting someone that I love. I really thought about taking the life of somebody, and he's very clear about saying that no, this is what it is. In a way, he's doing it unabashedly, and he's sharing it in this very vulnerable and forthright way, which I think can be helpful. Again, destigmatizing. But there's another way that he's kind of relishing in. It feels like at times that he's just, and it's not necessarily a bad thing, but something worth considering and thinking about a little bit more if you're someone listening to these tracks and perhaps relating with his feelings. He even talks about bipolar being his superpower.
Yeah.
Which is also
you kind of gotta love to hate it, right? It's your superpower. You're not seeking help for it. You're not seeking help from a psychiatrist or a psychologist about it. But two, you're bringing light to the fact that it's just a disorder, and you don't want people to feel like they're any less of a person. Right. So it's which one? It's
right. And there is both in there.
Yeah, there's both in there. It's don't,
He said it's not a disability, it's my superpower.
Exactly. So I'm being positive about it, but I'm also minimizing it as well.
I think he says that at the end of All Mine, right? But and I think there is with bipolar in particular, right? With the mania, because you're removed some in part from reality. There is this distance from reality when you're in mania. There is a level of enjoyment that people have while they're in it, that unlimited amounts of energy, not needing sleep, the flight of ideas, the grandiosity, the impulsivity. There's a level of euphoria in it. It's just
utility. Think about it as an artist.
Right.
Think about it as
being
an artist.
productive.
I got Mania, and I got this album need to come out, and I don't even need to sleep. I worked on this album for 24, 36 hours. There is utility in that. But then also, if we're taking it from the album artwork with Kanye West and bipolar disorder, it is also important to consider that it looks different in different people, because Jennifer Lewis also talks about having bipolar disorder. So think about it this way: Jennifer Lewis and Kanye West, if we're going off of what has been said, have the same disorder, and yet she also goes to say mania is exhausting. It is exhausting.
Yes. And having to come out of it because it does end.
Yes.
Right.
And deal with the repercussions of that.
Yes. And she used to think she shared. This was on The Root. She shared about how we're talking about the same interview. It's just The Root is where I saw it. She talks about how she thought her mania was a part of her stage presence, and would take away from her as an artist, being that having that level of just flight of idea and creativity that can come from this very, very complicated like mind state. And but the consequences of it are, of course, drastic.
Yeah. And she when she said something about like when the mental health clinician, and I keep saying mental health clinician because I cannot recall if it was psychiatrist or psychologist, and I don't want to be incorrect with that.
Sure.
Suggested like the medication. She was like, I'm not going to take medication. You're going to take away who I am with this medication.
Right.
I'm Jennifer. She said, I'm Jennifer
Right.
M.F. Lewis. Like, you're not going to take away who I am with this medication.
Right.
And that's because she wasn't, like, clearly she wasn't ready for that point, like, for it at that point. And then, you know, she just, when she made that decision and decided to make that effort, because it is an effort, she is still who she is. It's just in a more healthy manner.
And that her mood is more balanced now.
Yep.
Because she doesn't have that instability in mood where she's going from mania to depression on a regular basis. And, you know, so I think flatly we need to, I think it's important to say, you know, bipolar is not a superpower. Right? Like Kanye's saying it's not a superpower.
But it's also not all that you are. I don't like when people say things like, oh, she has bipolar or she's bipolar. Your mental health disorder is not an adjective. That's not who you are. And it doesn't make you who you are. It's just something that you don't say someone is diabetes. You don't say it's an aspect of your identity. And you don't even have to decide it's an aspect of your identity. It could just be something that you're struggling with, but you're so much more than that. So don't. You know, I think when people say it that way, like they have this or they are this, it's very minimalizing and it takes away so much from the person.
Absolutely. So Kanye isn't bipolar. He's however he identifies, a man, rapper, artist, fashion designer, media icon, father, husband, who also battles with a mental health issue.
But we can agree that what he is tripping though. Like no matter what. Now,
aside from his issues with his mental health, there are things that he says that are obviously.
He's tripping. Just say it.
He's definitely tripping.
He's definitely tripping. Look at that. Yes.
You be trying to box me in with these.
With these statements. Yeah, because it's easier to quote you and say when you're wrong. You got to make the statement for me to prove you're wrong. So
is that the only reason? Is that the only reason?
Oh yeah.
Well, anyway, so this album, I guess, you know, it does. I think it does some good for destigmatizing, but I think the context is can be. We've used this word a lot. Can be a little bit irresponsible.
Yeah. So, well, do you have a favorite track on the album?
I don't know.
I do.
Which one is it?
Violent Crimes is my favorite album.
You mean your favorite song on the album?
My favorite song on the album, yeah.
And which one is that?
That's the last one. That's the one where he's talking about his daughter and he's like, man, I got a daughter now and now I got to realize that, women are like human beings, not just something that we conquered. Like, please, I don't want anyone to end up with someone like me. And how revealing is that to just say that, like, I know who I am as a person and as amazing as I am, I don't want my daughter to end up with someone like me. Right. It's just like, the best thing about music, especially rap and stuff like that, is the fact that people are just so open, like they see it as their catharsis. But he's really acknowledging the fact that, like, I have done some messed up stuff and I legit just wanted to conquer people, and now I have daughters, and now I just realized it's like in 44. Where
I knew you were going there. Yeah, make the connection.
Yep, when Jay-Z. So that album, that song. So the album is great. I think it's very different aspects of him, because I feel like Marcy Me is like old Jay, like the stuff that I used to listen to when I was younger. But like the 444, specifically when he says that, like, because Beyonce talks about having miscarriages, and he said your body couldn't hold on to like the child because I wasn't treating you right, or the fact that like when my daughter finds out about me cheating on you, then like the tooth fairy is fake. Like I've taken away like her childhood by finding out that the one like solid relationship I have was taken away. Like, just acknowledging the fact that, like, and also the only thing that's frustrating about that, I think the album is amazing. Why does it take you having a daughter, or, how old is Jay-Z? Old enough. I don't even need to know his age. Old enough. Why does it take having a daughter, or, getting married and being married for years? Like, why does it take that for you to like get it together? That's frustrating as a person, and honestly, it's incredibly frustrating as a woman.
Right, being on the other end of his self-growth.
Yeah, because your self-growth is you had so much destruction in your self-growth, and you're doing self-growth, and you had to realize after cheating and after having a child that, like, hey, I may not be ready to be married and be in love. Right. That's probably something you figure out before you're married.
Right. Yeah, we're definitely gonna have to do a part 2.
Yeah, we're gonna have to do a part 2
because we wanted to get
another hour, because I love Jay-Z, but that album was both freeing, and as soon as I finished the album, I played Lemonade like 12 times around because I was pissed.
Well, you know what though? I think that captures the like how complicated self-growth is. I think and self-awareness, and that's what therapy is, right? Therapy is both. Therapy can be absolutely life-changing and liberating, but the change that requires you to achieve that, it can be excruciating for a lot of people.
I think so. I think my therapeutic process is you learn more about yourself when I'm having revelations, and I'm not just, I'm gonna bring it back talking to friends, and they're like, yeah, but I'm talking to a professional, and they're like, wait. So we're going to process that because you glossed over that. And this is like a big thing. Like, let's process that as a human, because they know what to look for. Like, it's just so much more to be like, oh, I never acknowledged that was a big issue. So, yeah.
In some ways, it's like really, like, it's really great that Kanye can say, like, well, he talks about loving himself so much. I mean, even in I Thought About Killing You, he's talking about, like, I like myself way more than I like you. And I've definitely thought about killing myself. He talks about suicide ideation, of course. But even with that, right, like, he still says, I wouldn't want my daughter to marry someone like me or to be with someone like me, and the level of awareness you have to think about. First of all, well, I think a lot of men feel like that, unfortunately, but there's a level of, like, self-reckoning, right? You have to, like, realize there are things about me that are so damaging that I really don't want people that I really love and care about to have to go through. Jay-Z talks about that a lot in 444 in his Footnotes documentary.
Oh my God, the documentary! I love that.
On his song "Smile" on 444, he mentions his therapist. I mean, he really has become a very different person in his artistry, because he used to be so guarded. He used to be so, like, boarded up. I mean, his lyrics were great. His music was complex and dynamic, but he in many ways he wasn't very vulnerable. And now, like, 444 is a fresh, right? Well, there you go.
It's the biggest thing I see with, like, men in mental health and Black men in mental health, and especially when I've talked to people about relationships. It's like, so women will ask you to talk more about your emotions and all that stuff, but it's just like, if you've never been taught and you never have representation, think about how difficult that is to just say, oh, well, just talk to me, or you never talk about your feelings. And I just be like, well, they probably don't know their feelings, like, they don't really know the words of it. But I think that's a whole other episode.
I think so. We're gonna have to wrap that up, man. We've got to get into that, because there's a lot of good content out now about how this music genre, hip hop in general, and particularly, used to be so against mental health, and now is coming full circle when you see, these people with these certain personas that are impenetrable, right? Tough guy. There's a lot of violence and aggression, and Jay-Z's at this place where he's just thinking about how feelings come from everywhere. There's a lot of great stuff there, but we'll have to. Well, what were you gonna say?
I was gonna say, it's not just Jay-Z, because it's always been that, like, hip hop has been a representation of our culture. So the fact that, it used to be hip hop and rap, it used to be like, why is it so intense, or why is it always talk about murder and stuff? It's our dialogue. Like, we're talking about what's happening with us. So the fact that there is more information about it in hip hop and talking about mental health shows that is where our culture is going. It's always been, rap and hip hop has always been a representation of what is happening in our community. So the fact that there are more individuals talking about mental health in our community it just gives me hope that that's where we're going as a people.
Yeah, so more to come on 444 in particular. More to come. There's so much to dissect there. But we're going to have to wrap up for today. I just want to say, I hope, I really hope that Kanye, if he's not in therapy, that he gets in therapy, so that maybe the old Kanye and the new Kanye can have a conversation. You could be a full Kanye.
Yeah, and by therapy we mean therapy,
like therapy, not like talking to your family and friends, because that is not therapy.
Nope.
So maybe. And I mean, he and Jay used to be brothers, but not so much anymore. I mean,
they're still brothers. They might just be estranged, but that's a whole nother episode.
Yeah, they're growing in
Because
different directions.
they are growing in different directions, especially how they use their platforms. I will say, as always, if you like listening to us, please subscribe. We are on iTunes, we're on Google, we are on Acast, Stitcher, Spotify, anywhere you can find a podcast. Also, please go to our amazing website, theblackunconscious.com, and we really want to definitely integrate our listeners. So if you have topics you want to talk about, or comments that you have, or questions you want answered, just hit the Ask Us tab on the top, and you can ask a question or just make a comment on the episode and leave reviews. And we're on Instagram and Facebook.
Definitely do follow us on Instagram as well, The Black Unconscious. We have a lot of content. We do Friday Facts.
We do Friday Facts. We like post like once every, like we do a lot of like Black Pride stuff, but we also do a lot of mental health stuff. Like right now, there's something about the stages of change on the Instagram, which if you never heard about them, you should, because you may think you're ready to make a change, but you're not at like the right stage to do it yet. So
and there's no right stage.
Oh yeah, there is no. Well, damn, just okay.
Just
there's no way.
There's no right stage.
You're not at the stage that you think you're at.
You might not be.
You might. Oh my God, diplomat. You might not be. Okay.
Thanks for listening, folks.
Thank you.
We'll check you guys next week. See ya.